The bright San Francisco morning painted the glass-walled headquarters of Next Genentech in shimmering hues of gold and azure, creating an almost ethereal appearance that matched the company's cutting-edge reputation. The architectural marvel stood as a testament to modern innovation, its sleek façade reaching skyward like a crystalline beacon of progress in the heart of the city's bustling downtown district. The building's design wasn't merely aesthetic. It was a deliberate statement about transparency, innovation, and the future of corporate culture. As the early morning sun continued its ascent, the building came alive with an energy that was both palpable and distinct. The revolving glass doors spun in a nearly continuous motion, ushering in a diverse stream of employees dressed in everything from casual techwear to formal business attire. The lobby, with its soaring ceilings and minimalist design, served as more than just an entrance. It was the company's first impression, a space where corporate culture and human interaction merged in a carefully orchestrated dance. The acoustic environment of the lobby told its own story. The subtle whoosh of the climate control system provided a constant undertone, while the clicking of heels against the polished marble floors created a rhythm that spoke of purpose and direction. The occasional ding of the sleek elevators added punctuation to the morning symphony, their doors opening and closing with precise efficiency. The sound of friendly chatter echoed off the glass walls, creating a warm atmosphere that contrasted with the building's cool, modern aesthetic. Security checkpoints stood as silent sentinels, their presence both reassuring and imposing. The latest technology in badge readers and biometric scanners represented the delicate balance between accessibility and security that modern corporations must maintain. The security podiums, strategically placed to monitor all entrance points, were staffed by personnel who served as both guardians and greeters, their role essential to maintaining the building's secure yet welcoming atmosphere. The lobby's design featured several distinct zones that facilitated different types of interaction. Near the entrance, comfortable seating areas with contemporary furniture invited brief conversations and impromptu meetings. Digital displays mounted on the walls showcased company achievements, current projects, and global impact initiatives, serving as constant reminders of the organization's mission and values. A coffee kiosk in one corner offered artisanal beverages, its presence acknowledging the importance of both convenience and community in the modern workplace. Natural light flooded the space through the floor-to-ceiling windows, reducing the need for artificial lighting during daylight hours, a testament to the building's commitment to environmental sustainability. The careful integration of nature was evident in the strategic placement of living walls and indoor plants, which not only improved air quality, but also provided a subtle connection to the natural world in this highly technological environment. The employee traffic flow revealed careful architectural planning. Wide corridors prevented bottlenecks, while multiple security checkpoints ensured efficient processing of the morning rush. The layout encouraged natural movement patterns, with clear sight lines and intuitive wayfinding that helped both employees and visitors navigate the space with ease. Digital directories and interactive information kiosks stood ready to assist, their screens glowing with welcome messages and building maps. The demographic makeup of the arriving workforce reflected the diversity of San Francisco itself. Languages from around the world mingled in the air, creating a multicultural atmosphere that spoke to the global nature of the company's operations. Young programmers with backpacks full of laptops walked alongside seasoned executives carrying leather briefcases, their interactions highlighting the company's blend of traditional corporate culture and modern tech industry casualness. The security staff maintained a visible presence throughout the lobby, their trained eyes constantly scanning for anything out of the ordinary. Their uniforms, while professional, were designed to be approachable rather than intimidating, another careful balance in the corporate environment. Security cameras were discreetly integrated into the architecture, providing comprehensive coverage without creating an atmosphere of surveillance. As the morning progressed, the lobby's energy evolved. The initial rush of arrivals began to slow, replaced by a steady stream of visitors, delivery personnel, and employees returning from external meetings. The space adapted to these changing needs, demonstrating the flexibility required of modern corporate environments. Every detail, from the art on the walls to the security protocols in place, contributed to an atmosphere that would soon become the stage for an incident that would challenge assumptions, reveal hidden biases, and ultimately lead to transformative change. The morning light streaming through the windows illuminated not just a corporate lobby, but a space where human interactions, both positive and problematic, would unfold in ways that would impact lives far beyond the building's glass walls. Michael Tanner stood at his security podium with the rigid posture of someone who viewed their position as more than just a job. It was a calling. His crisp uniform, pressed to military precision, bore not a single wrinkle, and his name tag gleamed under the lobby's sophisticated lighting system. Every morning, he polished that badge until he could see his reflection in it, a ritual that reinforced his sense of authority and purpose within the corporate hierarchy. At 45 years old, Michael had spent the last 15 years in various security positions, gradually working his way up to what he considered the pinnacle of his career: head of security at one of San Francisco's premier tech companies. His journey to this position had been marked by a series of experiences that shaped his worldview and approach to his duties, often in ways that he himself didn't fully recognize. The way Michael carried himself spoke volumes about his character. His shoulders were always squared, his chin slightly elevated, and his eyes constantly scanning the lobby with what he believed to be professional vigilance, but often manifested as barely concealed suspicion. His movement patterns around his post were calculated and deliberate, designed to project an aura of authority that he had carefully cultivated over the years. Behind his stern exterior lay a complex web of personal experiences and biases that influenced his behavior. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood where status and authority were often conflated, Michael had developed a deep-seated belief in the importance of hierarchy and proper channels. His father, a former military man turned factory supervisor, had instilled in him a rigid sense of order and protocol that bordered on inflexibility. Michael's interaction style with employees and visitors revealed much about his character. With those he deemed appropriate or belonging, his demeanor could be almost friendly, offering small nods of recognition or brief exchanges about the weather. However, when faced with individuals who didn't fit his preconceived notion of what a tech company employee should look like, his personality underwent a subtle but significant transformation. His voice, normally modulated to a professional tone, would take on an edge of authority that bordered on condescension. His body language would shift, becoming more dominant and intimidating, though he would have defended these changes as necessary assertions of his authority. The power dynamics in these interactions were crucial to him, as they reinforced his sense of control and importance within the corporate structure. The security podium had become Michael's domain, his personal fiefdom within the larger corporate kingdom. He had personalized his space with small, regulation-approved touches, a specific arrangement of his security monitors, a particular way of organizing his logbooks, and a custom-built footrest that no other security officer was permitted to use. These small claims to territory reinforced his sense of ownership over his role and his space. Years of working in security had left their mark on Michael's psychological makeup. He had developed a set of mental shortcuts and prejudices that he mistook for professional insight. In his mind, he could read people instantly, categorizing them based on appearance, demeanor, and dress. These snap judgments, which he viewed as vital security skills, were often nothing more than unconscious biases dressed up as professional expertise. His relationship with authority was paradoxical. While he demanded absolute respect for his own position, he displayed an almost sycophantic deference to those he recognized as his superiors, particularly the executives he had come to know over time. This dynamic created a complex web of behaviors where he alternately acted as both subordinate and authority figure, depending on his audience. The morning routines were particularly important to Michael. He arrived exactly 45 minutes before his shift began, using this time to inspect his uniform, review security protocols, and mentally prepare for his day. This rigid adherence to routine wasn't just about professionalism, it was about control, about creating a predictable environment where he could exercise his authority without challenge. His interactions with other security staff revealed additional layers of his personality. He was quick to correct their procedures, often in front of others, viewing these moments as opportunities to display his expertise and reinforce his position in the hierarchy. While he considered himself a mentor to newer security officers, his guidance often came across as patronizing and inflexible. As Michael stood at his post that fateful morning, he was completely unaware that his carefully constructed world of authority and control was about to be challenged in a way that would force him to confront his own biases and assumptions. His rigid worldview, built up over years of unchallenged beliefs and reinforced behaviors, was about to collide with a reality that would shatter his illusions of control and expose the flaws in his judgment. James J. Rodriguez, known simply as Jay to his colleagues, approached the glass doors of Next Genentech with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned their position through merit rather than inheritance. His attire, a tailored but deliberately dated blazer paired with dark jeans, spoke volumes about his leadership philosophy. The blazer, while well cut, was chosen specifically to avoid the stereotype of the flashy tech CEO. Every aspect of his appearance was a carefully considered statement about his values and approach to leadership. Jay's journey to becoming CEO had been anything but conventional. Born to immigrant parents who ran a small bodega in East Los Angeles, he had learned the value of hard work and humility from an early age. His father's daily interactions with customers from all walks of life had taught him that respect wasn't about status or appearance, but about recognizing the inherent dignity in every person. These early lessons had shaped his leadership style and would prove crucial in the moments to come. His face bore the subtle marks of his journey. Laugh lines around his eyes that spoke of genuine joy in his work, a slight furrow in his brow that hinted at the countless challenges he'd overcome. His dark hair, neatly combed but not overly styled, and his warm but focused expression created an image of approachability combined with quiet determination. Every aspect of his appearance was chosen to put others at ease while maintaining the professionalism his position required. The leather satchel he carried held not just the usual executive paperwork, but also a well-worn notebook filled with ideas and observations. Jay believed in taking his own notes, maintaining a personal connection to the details of his work, rather than delegating everything to assistants. The satchel, like its owner, was chosen for functionality over flash, quality leather that would last, but without obvious designer branding. His educational background was impressive but not traditional for a tech CEO. After earning a scholarship to study computer science, he had worked his way through college doing IT support, an experience that gave him invaluable insight into the human side of technology. His subsequent rise through various tech companies had been marked by innovation not just in technology, but in human-centered leadership approaches. Jay's walking pace as he approached the building revealed his character, purposeful but unhurried, suggesting someone who valued efficiency but never at the expense of awareness and connection. He made eye contact with those he passed, offering genuine smiles that reflected his belief in the importance of acknowledging every individual's contribution to the company's success. His decision to enter through the main lobby on his first day, rather than using a private entrance, was characteristic of his leadership style. He believed in experiencing the company as his employees did, in understanding the daily rhythms and realities of the workplace he was about to lead. This choice, like many in his career, was deliberate and rooted in his commitment to authentic leadership. The visitor pass in his satchel was another conscious choice. Though he could have demanded immediate access and recognition, he had chosen to follow standard procedures on his first day. This decision reflected his broader philosophy about leadership, that authority should be earned through respect rather than demanded through position. Years of experience in the tech industry had taught Jay the importance of emotional intelligence in leadership. His response to difficult situations was typically measured and strategic, focused on long-term solutions rather than quick fixes. He had developed a reputation for turning challenging situations into opportunities for organizational growth and learning. His communication style was equally thoughtful. Jay was known for listening more than speaking, for asking questions that got to the heart of issues, and for finding ways to bridge differences and build consensus. These skills had been honed through years of navigating complex corporate environments and diverse team dynamics. The morning of his first day carried special significance for Jay. He had spent hours the previous evening reviewing company materials, not just the financial reports and strategic plans, but also employee feedback and cultural assessments. His goal wasn't just to lead the company, but to understand and enhance its human ecosystem. Personal experiences with prejudice and bias throughout his career had shaped his perspective on leadership and organizational culture. Rather than becoming bitter or defensive, these experiences had strengthened his commitment to creating inclusive environments where talent and dedication mattered more than appearance or background. As he prepared to enter the building, Jay carried with him not just the responsibility of his new position, but also the weight of representation, knowing that his actions and responses would set the tone for the entire organization. His presence as CEO was itself a statement about merit, diversity, and the changing face of corporate leadership in Silicon Valley. Little did he know that his first moments in the building would put all of these qualities, his patience, his emotional intelligence, his leadership philosophy, to an immediate and public test. The situation about to unfold would demonstrate why his particular combination of experience, temperament, and values made him the right person to lead Next Genentech into a new era. The moment Jay stepped through the revolving glass doors marked the beginning of a sequence of events that would challenge both individual assumptions and institutional cultures. The initial conflict emerged with the subtle precision of a well-crafted timepiece, each element clicking into place to create a situation that would resonate far beyond its immediate participants. The lobby's morning bustle provided the perfect backdrop for what was about to unfold. The space between the entrance and the security checkpoint became a stage where corporate culture, personal bias, and leadership philosophy would intersect in a profound and public way. The physical layout of the security station, elevated slightly above the lobby floor, created an immediate power dynamic that would play a crucial role in the upcoming interaction. As Jay approached the security checkpoint, the atmospheric shift was subtle but palpable. Michael Tanner's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly, his eyes narrowing as they focused on Jay's approach. The security guard's initial reaction, though slight, was telling, a mixture of suspicion and dismissiveness that spoke volumes about his preconceptions and biases. The first moments of their interaction were charged with unspoken assumptions. Michael's body language, the slight straightening of his spine, the unconscious adjustment of his nameplate, the way his hand came to rest near his radio, all suggested a preparation for confrontation rather than welcome. These micro-expressions and subtle movements created an atmosphere of tension before a single word was spoken. Jay's awareness of the situation was evident in his approach. His pace remained steady, neither hesitating nor rushing, maintaining the same dignified bearing that had carried him through countless similar situations in his career. His hand moved to his satchel with deliberate calm, already anticipating the need to present credentials, a routine he had experienced many times before. The growing audience of employees in the lobby added another layer of complexity to the scene. Their presence would serve as both witness and amplifier to what was about to transpire. Some slowed their pace, others pretended to check their phones while watching the interaction unfold. The public nature of the space meant that every word and gesture would be observed and interpreted by dozens of onlookers. Michael's initial barked command, "Hold it right there," shattered the professional atmosphere of the lobby. The volume and tone of his voice were deliberately chosen to assert authority and control, reflecting his deep-seated need to establish dominance in what he perceived as a potentially threatening situation. The command echoed slightly in the lobby's acoustic space, drawing even more attention to the unfolding scene. The physical positioning of both men became increasingly significant. Michael stood behind his podium like a judge behind a bench while Jay stood before it, creating a visual hierarchy that Michael sought to exploit, and Jay would need to navigate. The space between them became charged with meaning. Too close would be threatening, too far would suggest submission to the unnecessary authority being wielded. Jay's response to the initial challenge, a polite "good morning," accompanied by a slight tilt of his head, was carefully calibrated. His tone carried no hint of confrontation or defensiveness, instead projecting a calm assurance that would stand in stark contrast to Michael's aggressive posturing. This response, or rather the way it was delivered, momentarily threw Michael off balance, though he quickly recovered his authoritarian stance. The presence of the visitor pass in Jay's satchel added another layer of complexity to the situation. Though it was a valid credential, its very nature as a visitor pass rather than an employee badge would serve as ammunition for Michael's prejudices. The fact that Jay had chosen to use standard protocols rather than demand special treatment would ironically contribute to the confrontation about to unfold. Employees passing by began to slow their pace, some recognizing Jay from company announcements, others simply drawn to the growing tension in the air. One employee discreetly pulled out their phone, beginning to record the interaction, an action that would later prove significant in catalyzing organizational change. The modern phenomenon of instant documentation meant that this private interaction would soon become a very public example of institutional bias. The stage was now set for a confrontation that would test not just individual characters, but institutional values. The next few moments would transform what could have been a routine security check into a defining moment for corporate culture and leadership. The tension in the lobby had reached a critical point, ready to either dissolve into understanding or escalate into a situation that would have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. The tension in the lobby crystallized as Michael's dismissive attitude transformed into open hostility. His voice, already sharp with suspicion, took on an edge of condescension that seemed to physically cut through the professional atmosphere of the space. "CEO." "Nice try, buddy," he sneered, the words dripping with disbelief and barely concealed contempt. The phrase hung in the air like a challenge, creating ripples of discomfort among the growing audience of employees. The gathering crowd added layers of complexity to the situation. Employees who had been hurrying to their morning meetings now slowed their pace, forming small clusters of observers. Their presence created an unofficial amphitheater, with the security checkpoint as the stage for this unfolding drama. The soft murmur of their whispers provided an underlying soundtrack to the confrontation, while the occasional flash of a phone camera documented the scene for what would soon become viral evidence of institutional bias. Jay's response to the escalating situation demonstrated years of experience handling similar confrontations. His breathing remained steady and controlled, his posture open but firm, and his voice maintained its professional tone, despite the increasing hostility directed at him. Each of his attempts to explain his position was measured and clear, showing a remarkable restraint that would later be analyzed in corporate training sessions on professional conduct. The physical dynamics of the space began to shift as the confrontation intensified. Michael emerged from behind his security podium, a move intended to be intimidating, but one that actually surrendered the symbolic authority of his position. His body language became increasingly aggressive, shoulders squared, chin thrust forward, hands periodically moving to rest near his radio in an unsubtle threat to escalate the situation further. The recording of the incident, initially discreet, became more obvious as multiple employees pulled out their phones. The soft glow of recording lights created a technological Greek chorus, silently documenting every word and gesture. This digital audience would eventually transform a private confrontation into a viral moment that would spark national conversations about bias in corporate America. Michael's accusations became increasingly pointed and personal. His comments about Jay's appearance and demeanor revealed deep-seated prejudices about what a CEO should look like and how they should dress. Each statement exposed not just individual bias, but broader systemic issues about appearance, class, and authority in corporate culture. His reference to "guys like you" carried loaded implications that would later be dissected in diversity training sessions and corporate culture workshops. The psychological warfare being waged was subtle but intense. Michael's tactics, the interruptions, the dismissive gestures, the escalating threats, were designed to provoke an emotional response that would justify his suspicions. His repetitive demands for real identification despite being shown valid credentials revealed a deeper unwillingness to accept evidence that contradicted his preconceptions. Throughout the escalation, Jay maintained a strategic calm that served multiple purposes. His composed responses not only prevented the situation from deteriorating into a more serious confrontation, but also created a stark contrast with Michael's increasingly unprofessional behavior. This composure would later be recognized as a masterclass in crisis management and emotional intelligence. The power dynamics in play were complex and multi-layered. While Michael held temporary positional authority as the security checkpoint guardian, Jay possessed legitimate organizational authority as the incoming CEO. This clash of authorities created a tension that resonated with broader societal discussions about power, privilege, and presumption. The employees witnessing the scene represented a cross-section of corporate culture, their reactions ranging from shocked disbelief to uncomfortable recognition of similar experiences. Some began to step forward, preparing to intervene, while others remained frozen in place, their inaction speaking volumes about the bystander effect in professional settings. Time seemed to slow in the lobby as the confrontation reached its peak. Michael's threat to call for backup marked a critical escalation point, one that would have transformed a tense situation into a potentially volatile one. His hand moved decisively toward his radio, a gesture that in itself represented an escalation of force that would later be scrutinized in security protocol reviews. The atmosphere in the lobby had become electric with tension. The morning sunlight streaming through the glass walls seemed to spotlight the scene, creating an almost theatrical setting for this drama of power, prejudice, and professionalism. The corporate environment, typically a carefully orchestrated dance of professional interactions, had been transformed into a stage for a profound examination of institutional bias and personal dignity. The arrival of Richard Clean marked a seismic shift in the confrontation's dynamics. His voice, carrying the unmistakable authority of a board member, cut through the tension like a knife. "Mr. Rodriguez!" The exclamation echoed across the lobby, causing heads to turn and Michael's hand to freeze mid-reach for his radio. This moment of intervention wasn't just an interruption. It was the catalyst for a dramatic reversal of power that would reshape the corporate landscape. Richard's appearance was precisely what one would expect of a seasoned board member. Impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that spoke of corporate authority, his silver hair and confident stride projecting an aura of unquestionable legitimacy. His hurried approach to the scene carried both urgency and gravitas, his footsteps on the marble floor creating a soundtrack for this pivotal moment in the unfolding drama. The transformation of Michael's demeanor was immediate and profound. The color drained from his face in visible stages, his previously aggressive posture deflating like a punctured balloon. His hand, which had been so confidently reaching for his radio, now hung limply at his side. The physical manifestation of his realization, the widening eyes, the slightly parted lips, the subtle step backward, provided a masterclass in the body language of dawning horror. The lobby's atmosphere underwent an instant transformation. The tension that had been building like an approaching storm suddenly dissipated, replaced by a different kind of electric energy. The collective witnessing of authority being recalibrated in real time. The employees who had been discreetly recording the confrontation continued to do so, now capturing what would become a viral moment of corporate comeuppance. Richard's greeting to Jay carried layers of meaning beyond its surface courtesy. His use of Mr. Rodriguez and his evident excitement about Jay's arrival served as a public confirmation of Jay's identity and status. The warmth in his voice and his apologetic demeanor created a stark contrast with Michael's previous hostile treatment, highlighting the absurdity of the discrimination that had just taken place. The physical repositioning of the players in this corporate drama was significant. Richard's placement beside Jay created a visible alliance that shifted the power dynamic completely. Michael, who had moments ago been the self-appointed arbiter of belonging, now found himself physically and metaphorically isolated, standing alone on what had briefly been his stage of authority. Jay's response to this intervention demonstrated remarkable grace under pressure. His composure remained unchanged, neither smugly triumphant nor visibly relieved, maintaining the same dignified bearing he had shown throughout the confrontation. This consistency of character would later be noted in leadership seminars as an example of true professional poise. The gathered audience's reaction added another layer to the scene. Whispers turned to murmurs, some tinged with satisfaction at seeing justice served, others with embarrassment at having witnessed such a display of prejudice. The recording phones remained raised, capturing what would become a teaching moment about bias and accountability in corporate America. Michael's attempt to process this dramatic shift was visible in his physical struggle to maintain composure. His security uniform, which had moments ago seemed to him a symbol of authority, now felt like a costume in a play where he had dramatically misread his role. His attempts to speak resulted in nothing more than stammered fragments, each failed start underlining his loss of the authority he had so recently wielded with confidence. Richard's handling of the situation showcased years of corporate diplomacy. His brief but pointed reference to Jay's position as CEO was delivered with just enough emphasis to make its impact clear, while his swift move to escort Jay to his office demonstrated an understanding of the need to end the public spectacle while preserving professional dignity, though notably, only Jay's was left to preserve. The witnesses to this turning point found themselves part of a moment that would be referenced in countless future discussions about corporate culture and bias. Some began to disperse, heading to their offices with new perspectives on power and prejudice in the workplace. Others lingered, their phones still recording, intuiting that they were witnessing something significant in the evolution of their corporate environment. The aftermath of this turning point hung in the lobby like a lingering echo. The space, which had minutes ago been charged with confrontation, now held a different kind of tension, the tension of imminent change. As Jay and Richard walked toward the elevators, their conversation already turning to orientation plans and meetings, they left behind more than just a chastened security guard. They left a moment that would catalyze discussions, policy changes, and a fundamental reassessment of how appearance and authority intersect in corporate America. The ripple effects of the confrontation spread through Next Genentech's corporate ecosystem with the speed and force of a digital tsunami. Within hours, the video of the incident had traversed the company's internal communication channels, spawning hundreds of messages, discussions, and impromptu virtual meetings. The footage, captured from multiple angles by various employees, provided an unvarnished look at corporate bias in action. The lobby, once the stage for the confrontation, transformed into a hub of hushed conversations and meaningful glances. Employees gathered in small clusters, their voices low but intense as they dissected what they had witnessed. The security podium where Michael had stood now seemed to emanate an almost physical awkwardness, with subsequent security personnel handling their duties with notably heightened awareness and sensitivity. Social media platforms became the secondary battlefield, where the incident played out. The original video, posted by an anonymous employee, gained traction rapidly, first within Silicon Valley's tech community and then expanding to broader audiences. Hashtags emerged organically. Next Gen bias, CEO profiling, and corporate bias began trending, each carrying the story to new audiences and sparking wider conversations about discrimination in professional spaces. The company's internal messaging system buzzed with activity. Employees from different departments and levels shared their own experiences with prejudice and profiling, creating an impromptu digital forum for long-suppressed discussions about workplace bias. The incident had somehow granted permission for these conversations to emerge from the shadows of private chats into more public spaces. Comments on the viral video revealed the multiple layers of society's response to the incident. Some focused on the security guard's behavior, others praised Jay's composure, while many used the incident as a launching point for broader discussions about systemic bias in corporate America. The comment sections became miniature battlegrounds where various perspectives on power, privilege, and professionalism clashed and converged. The company's PR department found themselves in crisis mode, fielding calls from journalists, industry bloggers, and social media influencers. Their phones rang constantly as reporters sought official statements and background information. The pressure to respond quickly while maintaining sensitivity to all parties involved created a complex communications challenge that would later be studied in PR crisis management courses. Throughout the building, productivity took a noticeable dip as employees found themselves drawn into discussions about the incident. Video calls were dominated by side conversations about what had transpired, while Slack channels and email threads buzzed with debates about corporate culture and unconscious bias. The incident had effectively paused business as usual, forcing a moment of collective reflection. The Human Resources Department experienced an unprecedented surge in incident reports and concerns about workplace discrimination. Employees felt emboldened to share their own stories, leading to a flood of testimonials about similar, though perhaps less dramatic, experiences of prejudice and profiling within the corporate environment. These reports would later form the foundation for comprehensive policy reforms. Industry peers and competitors watched the situation unfold with intense interest. Other tech companies began internal reviews of their own security protocols and bias training programs, recognizing that they could easily find themselves in a similar situation. The incident sparked a wave of preemptive policy evaluations across Silicon Valley. Legal teams worked overtime to assess the company's liability and potential responses. They reviewed security protocols, employee training materials, and discrimination policies, identifying gaps that needed immediate attention. The incident served as a catalyst for a complete overhaul of corporate security procedures and discrimination prevention measures. The video's impact extended beyond corporate boundaries, sparking discussions in academic circles and professional training programs. Business schools quickly incorporated the incident into their case studies on leadership, crisis management, and corporate culture. The footage became a powerful teaching tool, illustrating how quickly unconscious bias can escalate into public relations disasters. News outlets picked up the story, framing it within larger narratives about discrimination in corporate America. Op-eds and analysis pieces dissected every aspect of the interaction, from Jay's composed response to the implications of Michael's assumptions. The incident became a touchstone for discussions about the intersection of appearance, authority, and bias in professional settings. Employee resource groups within the company mobilized, organizing listening sessions and forums to discuss the broader implications of what had occurred. These groups became crucial in channeling the energy of the moment into constructive dialogues about institutional change and cultural transformation. The immediate aftermath revealed how a single incident could serve as a catalyst for examining deeply rooted institutional biases. The viral spread of the video ensured that what might have been a private moment of discrimination became a public referendum on corporate culture and unconscious bias, forcing both individual and institutional reflection on long-standing practices and assumptions. The formal consequences of the incident unfolded with the methodical precision of corporate machinery set in motion. Michael Tanner's termination meeting, held in a sterile conference room far from his former post, marked the beginning of a cascade of institutional changes. The walk of shame through the lobby he had once commanded was mercifully brief, but psychologically devastating. Former colleagues averted their eyes, creating a corridor of silence that spoke volumes about the social consequences of his actions. The termination documentation cited multiple violations of company policy, including discriminatory behavior, unprofessional conduct, and abuse of authority. Each point was meticulously detailed, creating a paper trail that would later serve as both legal protection for the company and a template for similar cases across corporate America. The report highlighted not just the obvious discrimination, but also the subtle ways in which power had been misused. For Michael, the professional consequences extended far beyond the loss of his position at Next Genentech. His name and face, thanks to the viral video, had become synonymous with corporate discrimination. Job prospects in security, particularly in the tech sector, evaporated. Recruiters who might have once been interested now politely declined to return his calls, forcing him to confront the long-term impact of a moment's prejudice. The company's security department underwent a complete overhaul. Every procedure was reviewed, every protocol reassessed through the lens of potential bias. The physical layout of the security checkpoint was redesigned to be more welcoming while maintaining effectiveness. New guidelines were established for interaction with employees and visitors, with an emphasis on respect and professionalism over authority and intimidation. Training programs were revolutionized across the organization. What had once been perfunctory annual diversity seminars evolved into comprehensive programs addressing unconscious bias, cultural competency, and professional communication. The video of the incident, with appropriate permissions and legal clearances, became a central teaching tool, dissected and analyzed in training sessions throughout the corporate world. The financial consequences for the company were significant, but ultimately viewed as investments in necessary change. Resources were allocated to new training programs, security infrastructure, and cultural initiatives. The board recognized that the cost of not addressing these issues, in terms of both reputation and potential legal liability, far outweighed the expense of comprehensive reforms. human resources experienced a fundamental shift in approach to hiring and promotion practices. New screening protocols were implemented for security personnel, emphasizing emotional intelligence and cultural sensitivity alongside traditional security qualifications. The incident sparked a broader examination of how bias might be influencing hiring decisions across all departments. The legal department worked overtime to strengthen anti-discrimination policies and reporting procedures. New guidelines were established for handling similar incidents, with clear escalation protocols and consequences for violations. The incident became a case study in corporate liability and risk management, cited in legal seminars and professional training programs. For Michael personally, the psychological consequences ran deep. Mandatory sensitivity training sessions forced him to confront his biases and examine the root causes of his behavior. The process was uncomfortable but ultimately transformative, leading to a genuine understanding of the impact of unconscious bias and the importance of treating all individuals with respect regardless of appearance. The reverberations extended to Michael's family life, where he had to explain to his children why he no longer went to work at the big glass building. These difficult conversations forced him to articulate lessons about judgment and respect in ways that would shape his family's values for generations to come. The personal cost of his actions became a powerful teaching moment about the real-world consequences of prejudice. The security industry as a whole underwent a period of self-examination. Professional associations revised their training standards, incorporating stronger emphasis on cultural competency and bias awareness. The incident became a cautionary tale in security certification programs, leading to updated professional standards and ethical guidelines. Employee morale at Next Genentech experienced both challenges and opportunities. While some felt unsettled by the public nature of the incident, many expressed relief that long-standing issues were finally being addressed. The company's decisive response and commitment to change helped rebuild trust and strengthen corporate culture. The long-term consequences of the incident continued to unfold in unexpected ways. What began as a moment of discrimination evolved into a catalyst for positive change, not just within Next Genentech, but across corporate America. The space hummed with anticipation as employees filled every available seat, while hundreds more watched via video conference. The energy in the room was palpable, a mixture of curiosity, concern, and hope for how their new leader would address the morning's events. The setting itself spoke volumes about Jay's leadership style. Rather than issuing a sterile memo or delegating the response to HR, he chose to address the situation directly and personally. The conference room's layout had been deliberately arranged to create an atmosphere of openness and dialogue, rather than top-down pronouncement. Jay stood not on a raised platform but at floor level, physically embodying his commitment to accessible leadership. His opening words set the tone for what would become a watershed moment in corporate culture. This morning's incident highlights an issue far bigger than any one person. The statement hung in the air, its implications reaching into every corner of the organization. Jay's voice carried the perfect balance of authority and empathy, each word carefully chosen to acknowledge the gravity of the situation while pointing toward constructive change. The structure of his address revealed a masterful understanding of organizational psychology. He began by acknowledging the immediate incident without dwelling on its negative aspects, then skillfully broadened the discussion to address systemic issues within corporate culture. His approach demonstrated the rare ability to transform a crisis into an opportunity for organizational growth. Throughout his speech, Jay wove together personal experience with professional insight. He shared carefully selected moments from his own career where he had faced similar prejudices, but always brought these anecdotes back to the larger issue at hand. This vulnerability from a CEO was unprecedented for many in the audience, and it served to build a powerful connection with employees at all levels. The announcement of new initiatives came not as defensive reactions, but as part of a comprehensive vision for corporate culture. Each proposed change was presented with clear reasoning and implementation plans. The mandatory diversity and sensitivity training was just one part of a larger transformation that would touch every aspect of the organization, from hiring practices to daily operations. Jay's body language throughout the address reinforced his message. He moved comfortably around the space, making eye contact with various sections of the audience, his gestures open and inclusive. When he spoke about accountability, he turned to face the executive team directly, making it clear that change would start at the top. The Q&A session that followed demonstrated Jay's commitment to transparent leadership. He took unscreened questions from employees, addressing each with thoughtful consideration. Even challenging questions about the company's previous handling of discrimination issues were met with honest acknowledgement and clear plans for improvement. The technical aspects of the proposed changes were presented with both precision and flexibility. While the core requirements were non-negotiable, Jay emphasized that implementation details would be developed collaboratively, with input from employees at all levels. This approach helped transform what could have been seen as punitive measures into collaborative opportunities for growth. Throughout the presentation, Jay maintained a delicate balance between authority and approachability. He was firm about the need for change, but open to discussion about how best to achieve it. This combination of clear direction and collaborative approach would become a hallmark of his leadership style. The financial commitment to these changes was presented straightforwardly. Rather than minimizing the costs, Jay framed them as essential investments in the company's future. His business acumen showed in how he connected these initiatives to long-term company success, making a compelling case for why diversity and inclusion were not just moral imperatives, but business necessities. The response from the audience evolved throughout the meeting. Initial tension gave way to engagement, and by the end, there was a palpable sense of collective purpose. Employees who had begun the day witnessing a disturbing incident of discrimination ended it feeling part of a meaningful transformation. The virtual component of the meeting added another layer of complexity that Jay handled skillfully. He regularly acknowledged the remote audience, ensuring they felt equally included in the discussion. The chat function buzzed with positive comments and thoughtful questions, all of which were given appropriate attention. As the meeting concluded, Jay introduced the formation of employee-led task forces to help guide the implementation of these changes. This move brilliantly transformed passive observers into active participants in the company's evolution. The sign-up sheets for these task forces would later need to be expanded due to overwhelming response. The leadership team's unified presence behind these initiatives was carefully choreographed. Each department head spoke briefly about how these changes would be implemented in their area, demonstrating that this was not just a top-down directive, but a company-wide commitment to transformation. Michael Tanner's journey of self-reflection began in the uncomfortable silence of his suddenly empty apartment. The security uniform he had worn with such pride hung in his closet like a reminder of everything he had lost. The first few days after his termination were spent in a haze of denial and self-justification, but as the viral video continued to circulate, reality began to sink in with unavoidable clarity. The process of understanding his own biases started with mandatory attendance at sensitivity training workshops, a requirement for his severance package. Initially, he approached these sessions with reluctance and skepticism, viewing them as punishment rather than opportunity. The defensive barrier he had built around his actions began to crack only when faced with the stories of others who had experienced profiling and discrimination. His transformation wasn't immediate or easy. Each workshop session forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about his behavior and its impact on others. The facilitator, a skilled professional in dealing with resistance to change, gradually helped Michael understand how his own experiences and insecurities had shaped his interactions with others. The process was like peeling back layers of an onion, each revelation more painful but necessary than the last. The impact on his personal life became a crucial catalyst for change. His teenage daughter's reaction to the viral video, her tears of embarrassment and pointed questions about why he had treated someone that way, cut deeper than any corporate reprimand. Explaining his actions to his children forced him to articulate thoughts he had never fully examined, and their innocent but incisive questions revealed the hollowness of his justifications. Support groups for individuals dealing with job loss became an unexpected source of growth. In these meetings, Michael found himself sharing space with people from diverse backgrounds, each with their own story of professional setback. The irony of finding connection and understanding in such a diverse group wasn't lost on him. and these interactions began to reshape his worldview in fundamental ways. The financial stress of unemployment added another dimension to his personal growth. Having to navigate the job market as someone now marked by controversy gave him a new perspective on vulnerability and judgment. Each rejected application and unanswered email helped him understand the impact that snap judgments and prejudices could have on someone's life and livelihood. His participation in community workshops on racial bias and sensitivity, initially approached as a way to rehabilitate his image, evolved into a genuine journey of understanding. The facilitators noticed his gradual shift from defensive participant to engaged learner, and eventually to someone who could share his own story as a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked bias. The process of rebuilding his professional life required a complete reassessment of his approach to authority and control. Working with a career counselor, he began to understand how his need to assert authority had masked deeper insecurities about his own place in the corporate hierarchy. This insight led to a fundamental shift in how he viewed power dynamics in professional settings. Social media, which had been the instrument of his public shame, became a tool for learning. He began following diversity advocates and educational accounts, gradually expanding his understanding of different perspectives and experiences. The comment sections, which he had initially avoided out of shame, became spaces where he could observe discussions about bias and privilege from multiple viewpoints. His relationship with former colleagues underwent a complex evolution. Some cut ties completely, while others, seeing his genuine efforts to change, maintained cautious contact. These interactions, though sometimes awkward, provided valuable opportunities for him to practice new ways of relating to others without the crutch of authority. The development of empathy became a crucial part of his journey. Through various exercises and real-world interactions, Michael began to understand the impact of microaggressions and subtle forms of discrimination. He started noticing behaviors in others that he had once exhibited himself, and these observations deepened his understanding of how pervasive such biases could be. Professional therapy sessions helped him process the shame and anger that initially clouded his ability to learn from the experience. His therapist helped him understand how his background and previous experiences had shaped his worldview, while also holding him accountable for his choices and actions. The most significant change came in his understanding of security and safety. Through additional training and education, he began to see how true security came from building trust and respect rather than exercising authority and control. This revelation led him to explore new career paths that aligned with this evolved understanding. His journey became a case study in personal transformation, demonstrating how a crisis could become a catalyst for profound change. While the incident that triggered this journey would always remain a part of his story, it was his response to it, the difficult work of self-examination and change, that would ultimately define his character development. The transformation of Next Genentech under Jay Rodriguez's leadership became a case study in corporate evolution. The glass-walled headquarters, once the site of a viral moment of discrimination, transformed into a symbol of transparency and progressive corporate culture. The changes weren't merely cosmetic. They reached into every aspect of the organization's DNA, reshaping how business was conducted at every level. The security desk where the incident occurred underwent both physical and philosophical transformation. The imposing podium was replaced with a more welcoming concierge-style setup, staffed by security professionals trained in both protection and hospitality. The space was redesigned to maintain security, while emphasizing accessibility and respect. Visitors were now greeted with warm professionalism rather than suspicious scrutiny. Employee engagement metrics told the story of organizational transformation. Survey results showed a marked increase in job satisfaction and belonging across all demographic groups. The company's internal communication platforms buzzed with genuine dialogue about inclusion and equity, replacing the cautious silence that had previously surrounded such topics. Employee resource groups flourished, their membership and influence growing beyond traditional boundaries. The ripple effects spread throughout Silicon Valley. Other tech companies began studying Next Genentech's transformation, sending observers to learn from their procedures and policies. The incident that had initially threatened the company's reputation became a catalyst for industry-wide change. Consulting firms specializing in corporate culture pointed to Next Genentech as a model of successful transformation. Recruitment patterns shifted noticeably. The company began attracting a more diverse pool of candidates, drawn by its demonstrated commitment to inclusion. The security team in particular saw a complete overhaul in its composition and approach, with new hires selected for their combination of technical skills and emotional intelligence. The interview process now included scenarios designed to assess candidates' responses to potential bias situations. Jay's leadership style set a new standard for corporate executives. His approach to the initial crisis, facing it head-on while maintaining dignity and composure, became a template for crisis management. Business schools incorporated the case into their curricula, analyzing how a potentially damaging incident was transformed into an opportunity for positive change. The company's financial performance during this period of transformation surprised many analysts. Rather than hindering growth, the focus on cultural change coincided with increased innovation and productivity. Employee retention improved, particularly among underrepresented groups, leading to reduced recruitment costs and stronger institutional knowledge. The physical space of the headquarters evolved to reflect the new corporate culture. Meeting rooms were renamed after diverse historical figures who had overcome discrimination to achieve greatness. Art installations celebrating different cultures and perspectives appeared throughout the building. The lobby, in particular, became a showcase for works that prompted discussions about perception, bias, and inclusion. Training programs developed in response to the incident gained recognition beyond corporate boundaries. Other organizations began requesting access to Next Genentech's diversity and inclusion materials. The company's internal and external messaging evolved to reflect a deeper understanding of inclusion and representation. Marketing materials naturally incorporated diverse perspectives without feeling forced or tokenistic. The corporate website was redesigned to reflect the company's commitment to accessibility and inclusion. Professional development programs were revamped to ensure career advancement opportunities were truly accessible to all. Mentorship initiatives flourished, with senior leaders actively engaging with employees from underrepresented groups. The promotion process was overhauled to include checks against unconscious bias, resulting in more diverse leadership at all levels. The company's approach to customer relations also evolved. Product development began incorporating diverse perspectives from the earliest stages, leading to innovations that served a broader range of users. Customer service protocols were revised to ensure respectful treatment of all clients, regardless of appearance or background. The legal framework supporting these changes was robust and comprehensive. New policies were developed with input from civil rights experts and employment law specialists. The company's stance on discrimination became unequivocal, with clear consequences for violations and support systems for reporting concerns. Independent audits of company culture showed sustained improvement in key metrics of inclusion and belonging. The initial crisis had sparked genuine, lasting change that went beyond surface-level diversity initiatives to create fundamental shifts in how people worked together and treated one another. Regular town halls and open forums became platforms for ongoing dialogue about corporate culture. These sessions, led by Jay and other executives, maintained momentum for positive change while addressing new challenges as they arose. The company's commitment to transformation remained dynamic and responsive to employee feedback. The story's exploration of leadership versus authority emerged as a central theme throughout the narrative. Jay Rodriguez's composed response to discrimination demonstrated how true leadership transcends positional power, while Michael's misuse of authority illustrated the pitfalls of confusing control with leadership. This contrast became a powerful lesson in the difference between earning respect and demanding compliance. The interplay between appearance and reality wove through every level of the narrative. The initial judgment based on Jay's casual attire highlighted society's often unconscious associations between appearance and capability. The glass walls of the Next Genentech building served as both literal and metaphorical representations of transparency, their clarity contrasting with the opacity of prejudice. Prejudice and bias manifested in both overt and subtle ways throughout the story. The security guard's immediate suspicion of Jay based on his appearance represented explicit bias, while the initial hesitation of some employees to intervene illustrated more subtle forms of complicity. The narrative exposed how bias operates at both individual and institutional levels, requiring comprehensive approaches to create meaningful change. The power of dignity under pressure emerged as a recurring motif. Jay's maintained composure in the face of discrimination demonstrated how dignity can be a form of resistance. His response provided a masterclass in handling discrimination without sacrificing professional presence, showing how maintaining one's dignity can be more powerful than responding with anger or confrontation. Institutional change versus personal transformation played out in parallel throughout the narrative. While Next Genentech underwent structural changes in policies and procedures, individuals like Michael experienced personal journeys of understanding and growth. The story illustrated how organizational and individual transformation must work in tandem to create lasting change. The role of technology and modern accountability threaded through the narrative. The employee's recording of the incident and its subsequent viral spread demonstrated how digital documentation has transformed the landscape of corporate accountability. Social media's amplification of the incident showed both the power and responsibility of technological tools in addressing social issues. The theme of voice and silence manifested in various ways. The initial silence of some witnesses contrasted with the voices that eventually emerged to share similar experiences. The story explored how creating space for voices previously silenced can transform corporate culture and lead to more inclusive environments. Professional identity and personal values intersected throughout the narrative. Jay's choice of modest attire reflected his personal values, while Michael's attachment to his uniform revealed how professional roles can sometimes mask deeper insecurities. Michael's termination represented necessary consequences, while his subsequent journey of self-reflection offered possibilities for redemption. This balance showed how addressing bias requires both clear consequences and opportunities for learning and change. Community response and collective responsibility emerged as crucial elements. The way employees, management, and eventually the broader corporate community responded to the incident highlighted how addressing discrimination requires collective action and shared commitment to change. The power of narrative and storytelling in creating change was itself a meta-theme. The incident's transformation from a personal confrontation to a catalyst for industry-wide change demonstrated how stories can drive social transformation. The various retellings of the incident, in training sessions, media coverage, and case studies, showed how narrative shapes understanding and action. Legacy and lasting impact rounded out the thematic elements. The changes implemented at Next Genentech created ripple effects throughout the corporate world, demonstrating how addressing bias can lead to positive transformation beyond initial intentions. The story's conclusion showed how moments of crisis, when handled with wisdom and courage, can become catalysts for enduring positive change. These thematic elements combine to create a rich tapestry of meaning, transforming a single incident into a comprehensive exploration of corporate culture, human dignity, and the possibility of positive change. The story's resonance came from its ability to weave these themes together in ways that spoke to both individual experiences and broader societal challenges. As the narrative concluded, it left readers with profound questions about their own roles in creating more inclusive environments, the nature of true leadership, and the ongoing work of addressing bias in all its forms. The story's lasting impact lay not just in its depiction of a transformative moment, but in its invitation to readers to examine their own assumptions and commit to being agents of positive change.